Does the United States owe Cuba a military intervention, especially after John F. Kennedy abandoned Cuban freedom fighters for the Bay of Pigs back in 1961? I would say, even if you could say that the United States owes Cuba a military intervention right now, I don't believe would be a good idea, especially given the history of U.S. military interventions. They don't always end up as clean or as easily deposing a dictatorship like what happened in Iraq with Saddam Hussein, both for the liberation of Kuwait and then later on with the final um, deposing of Saddam Hussein in Iraq. I wish we could. It seems like it would be easy enough. It seems that's the problem. It always seems like it would be that easy, but then there would be a vacuum of power, and I'm not really sure what is the plans afterwards uh, for. Let's say we do take down the Castro regime. The one thing I'm not hearing enough is what would happen right afterwards. And by the way, I ask this question because that sentiment that I've heard for many years since I was a kid was expressed by Jose Lamas, the father of retired UFC fighter Ricardo Lamas, on the Timcast IRL show. And I thought it was a great conversation. I've linked that interview down below for anybody who wants to watch it.
Do you know what happened in 1961 with the invasion of Iran?
Mm-mm.
Okay, there were, in Miami, as young Cubans began to go from Havana, from Cuba to Miami, in Miami, when they knew they were going to prepare a force to fight, they all started to volunteer.
Also known as a Bay of Pigs.
That's right.
Oh, yes. Right.
Okay. They started to volunteer and they wanted to go to Cuba to liberate Cuba. But then Kennedy changed the plans. And Kennedy was told, but listen, what do we do with the 1,500 Cubans that want to go? And then his advisor said, well, Mr. President, they want to go to Cuba. They want to go to fight. And then he said, okay, send them. But no air coverage. No support. That was like sending the best of the Cuban youth in exile to die. This country has to pay us back. Because after that, you know what had happened in 62 years.
He escaped the Castro regime, and my hat's off to him. He fought against the Castro regime. He was one of those Cubans that did not take it on the chin, man. Pun intended, considering his son's a UFC fighter and a champ. And I agree with everything that they were talking about. And it is very important for more people to understand the horrors of the Castro regime. And it's just amazing how many people are still making excuses for them. I just don't get it. And something else that was talked about on the show was a certain someone who I definitely don't want to mention. I don't want to give some of these pseudo-intellectuals, these pretentious, pompous Poindexters, any credit for insinuating that it's the CIA that's instigating all those protests in Cuba. Show us the evidence. If you're so sure that it's the CIA doing it, why don't you show the evidence? This is not helpful at all. There are people dying in Cuba. As of now, I believe it's about 400 people that are missing or unaccounted for that have definitely been arrested. But that's the thing. Of the arrests, it's about maybe 100 or so, according to Human Rights Watch. And according to one hearing that I was listening to, I think they're up to around 400 people that are unaccounted for. And for anybody who understands Spanish, and you support the Castro regime, but you're not Cuban, because this is another phenomenon I don't understand. People who are not Cuban People who have no vested interest in Cuba. They have no relatives there. They might have a family or so after. I mean, they might have a friend after a visit to Havana while they were sipping mojitos in El Floridita or something like that. So they might have some friends, and they think they know what's going on over there. You don't. If you're supporting the Castro regime, if you're making excuses for them, you have no idea what the Cuban people are going through. I don't get that. I really don't get that. I can understand the anti-American sentiment, and I've learned to just laugh at the hypocrisy of so many anti-Americans that still live in the United States that will not live in Cuba. But please don't, right now, if you're concerned about human rights, period, and human lives, we don't need disinformation. And we don't need snarky, condescending, smarter than thou idiocy about the CIA and how they've interfered with Cuba. And by the way, I know the CIA has interfered with Cuba. They basically interrogated my parents back in the early 1970s. And I'm not going to get into all the details of what happened. And my parents had fled Cuba. My parents were on the side of freedom. My parents were on the side of human rights. My mother was put in a forced labor camp. Yeah, the CIA has done some pretty nasty things. But what's going on over there, that uprising, that necessary uprising, don't blame that on the CIA unless you have the evidence. And even if it is instigated by the CIA, it's about time. It's about time that the Castro regime is exposed to the world for what they've been doing to the Cuban people. Stop blaming the embargo too. Please stop blaming the embargo. It's not the embargo that's doing this brutal, repressive crackdown on the Cuban people. But coming back to the title of this video, does the United States owe Cuba a military intervention? I would say no, considering the messy history of U.S. Military interventions, even when the dictatorships have come down quite easily, like with Saddam Hussein in Iraq. It's always a mess. It's always quite the cleanup. And plus, it's up to the Cuban people. The Cuban people have to fight for it. Freedom isn't free, and it's bloody to get it. And it's amazing. It's amazing that is not the norm for all of humanity. It's amazing that freedom is an anomaly. It's a fluke. And that you have to fight for it. It's not a given. It's amazing. It's amazing that of the 195 countries right now in 2021 on this planet, about 50 of them are dictatorships. And who knows how many other ones are kind of quasi-dictatorships. But I've seen this, I think it was on planetrulers.com. 50. That's 25% of humanity. And since the dawn of civilization, it's always been pharaohs and kings and just dictatorships. And it's an unfortunate fact of reality, how governments work. Anyway, just some food for thought for anyone who is interested in what's going on in Cuba and who would like to finally see a genuinely free Cuba. There are ways of doing this. A humanitarian intervention is undoubtedly necessary. There's no other way the Cuban people are going to have any freedom, let alone democracy, as long as the Castro regime is still in power. They're not going to. You can't negotiate with murderous psychopaths. It's just not going to happen. But how we do this, I wish I had the answer for anybody watching this video. If it goes around, please, in the comments down below, and please spare me the snarky asides. I don't care. I'm not going to answer any snarky clapbacks or anything like that. Please stop. It's just not. It's not helpful at all. But if anybody has any ideas, which I'm sure is being discussed by the adults on the planet, the real adults. But look at what the real adults do too. There's a painting I did, and I call it State of the Union 2020. This was when Trump was president. It's AOC, there's Robert Mueller, there's Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. That's what the adults do. It's an extreme dysfunction in our government. So I kind of have lost a little bit of hope that people in government know what to do. It's not for nothing why we have so many dictatorships around the world. Anywho, with that said, don't want to make this too long. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Check out the links down below for t-shirts that I have for sale and for my artwork that is also for sale. And thank you for watching.